Hey, I'm Jenny Rae, and I have a real treat for you today. We have a podcast mic takeover. Emma's here with us. She's going to intro herself in just a minute, but she is the one who is grabbing the mic. She's asking the questions and getting the dish for all of y'all. So we're just wanting to welcome you, to say hi. Make sure that you follow along. You're going to get some great insight from this podcast. For now, Emma, I'm turning over the reins. It's up to you. Lead the convo. First, just give us an intro of who you are and then dive in with the questions.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. So my name is Emma Decker. I am a sophomore at Clemson University, majoring in industrial engineering. And right now I'm in a consulting class for the first semester, which I really loved. And this has kind of made me interested in the whole consulting world. And I've got to meet a lot of cool people. And so I just kind of wanted to ask a few questions I have of the world and everything to do with that.
Amazing. We're excited to have you. I'm an open book, so dive right in.
Okay, perfect. Well, one of the first questions I had was, when did you start getting into your consulting career, and when should that start for someone like me in college?
Love it. So I'm a terrible example. Just to start out with, I began my consulting career with absolutely no interest in business. And I took classes in economics and classes in accounting when I was in undergrad. But I was like, I will never go into one of two things. I will never go into consulting and I will never go into banking, because it was kind of the popular track of what everybody wanted to do. And I wanted to do something differentiated and unusual and special. And so I did what I would absolutely not recommend, which is that I graduated without a full-time job. I mean, why would you do that if you have this buffet of amazing options that are on campus? I shaved my head and I traveled around the world for a year. So I got into it in totally what I would consider to be a very authentic, but not necessarily the recommended way. So my number one recommendation is that you have to have an authentic journey. Right? If you take a class where you're interested in consulting, then use that as a launching off point to do stuff like this, right? To jump on a pod, to get some mentors, and to pursue opportunities to confirm that your interest is real. For me, that was what traveling was for me. And that was where I really found a passion for business in itself. And then I kind of came around to consulting as a way to help businesses on the back end. The second thing that I would say is that you will never regret getting advanced analytical skills that you can use on a lot of different opportunities. So when you're in class or on the job, stretch yourself for advanced analytical skills. Even if it's not your number one thing that you love, having the ability to do analytics opens up the majority of job opportunities for you. And the number one question that they're asking in consulting firms isn't what's a great paper that you wrote, but it's, can you run advanced analysis and come up with insights and then sell those insights and those actions that need to be taken to a senior executive. And the third thing that I would recommend is just to be a little wild. So that is a part of my journey. But a lot of people don't recognize that amongst the sea of the great scores and the good analytics and the confirmed interest are people who are just a little bit off their rocker. And you have to be, in order to say, hey, I want to sign up for really long work hours, super wild, fast-paced projects, but somebody who just can say, I love, like one of the staff members on our team is a professional flutist who also speaks Arabic. Like, this is you're building a brand. And he didn't do that because he was like, what's something that no one else does? Okay, they don't play the professional flute. He just did it because that's who he is and what he loves. And so I think sometimes we tame ourselves when when you're an undergrad, you kind of tame yourself into what you feel like is the right pathway. And I just want to encourage people, there's a right baseline, but then there's this X factor, this wild factor that's really important to cultivate as well.
I know I feel like I hear a lot of, you need to always do something that looks good on the resume or for your career, but then I think it gets lost of other people's personal interests, and you can have passions outside of just your major in the workforce, for sure.
Big time. Yeah. What people I think are saying is like it's good to have skills and you'll never be unhireable if you have solid brand names on your resume. But it's not enough of a reason on its own. You have to be intellectually engaged and passionate about the work that people do and excited to learn from people who are successful and senior. And if that is part of why you're going to get those opportunities, that's amazing. But it
Mhm.
can't just be to put it on a resume to go get something else. Otherwise, you end up in this churn and burn model and people burn out really quickly.
Okay, so what about when I'm working a job and it's my first big job? What is too like, how much is too many questions for me to be asking and trying to learn from others?
That's great. What I generally recommend is that people who ask what we would consider as senior advisors or somebody who's senior in an organization too many questions. They do one of two things. Number one, if it's a question about your work product, what I'm looking for you to do is to confirm hypotheses, not ask questions. So instead of when do you want this done, I think I would plan to get this delivered on Friday. Does that timeline work for you? So is a way that you can reduce the number of questions that you ask about work product by taking more ownership on. That's something that we're looking for. That gets you rehired. That gets you opportunities to continue in the job flow. When you say, not what analysis do you want me to look at, but here's what I'm planning to go do. Right. So always having your own work plan, work timing, work process, work deliverables, all of those things are incredibly powerful. Trust me, people will tell you if you're not on the right track. Um, but the second piece of that is really separating out work product time on the job from questions about bigger picture items, right? Tell me how you felt the first time that you sold a client. What do you think is one skill that you felt was underrated? Open-ended questions. And we call those PSP questions. They're the same types that you want to have for interviews. They're personal, specific, and positive, right? So you don't want to enter on the job kind of ask these interrogation questions where you're like, what's the one thing that you dislike about the role? It can't be negative. It can't be general, right? Tell me about your job. Those don't play very well, but personal, specific, and positive, so that people turn into storytelling mode. Those are incredibly engaging questions, and they're really, really helpful for building both your perception of what the bigger picture of a role is like, and also your connection, emotional connection with people inside an organization. I would recommend generally that you separate the timing for the two of those. If you ask those kinds of PSP questions in a work product meeting, people feel like you're stalling and don't want to get the work done. So ask those at a coffee, ask people to breakfast. If you want to go on a work walk where it's like, hey, do you mind taking just 30 minutes? We could just go for a walk around the building. I'd love to hear a little bit about your life or perspective. Those kinds of opportunities are where you want to ask those PSP questions.
Okay, that makes so much sense. So, since we're talking about other people in the work environment, what about all things networking? Because to
Yeah.
me, I'm always very intimidated by it because everyone seems older and like they know what they're doing. And I'm just a little college student who's trying to learn. So, how do I start networking while understanding my position in the relationship?
Yeah. People are the most interested in networking with y'all if you're an undergrad when you are in the hiring season. So, Emma, you said you're a sophomore. Your junior hiring interviews are going to happen starting in the spring. So, almost a year in advance. So, what you need to talk about now with people is junior internships. The people that you will be most actively networking with are ones that are hiring for junior internships. And so, your job is to basically let them know I'm really interested in the following characteristics of a job this summer. Maybe it's a personal tie-in, right? X, Y, and Z recommended y'all. There's somebody who's a senior who I worked with on a consulting project in a class, and they recommended you as a potential employer. I'd love to find out more about what a summer with you would look like. But actually, a lot of the questions can and should be really tactical. They need to maintain the positive environment. So the same type of P questions, and personal, specific, and positive is always a good guideline for networking as well, right? Tell me one reason why you love the firm. I'm really excited to apply for the summer. Would you be open to jumping on a phone call if I have further questions, right? Just keep it open, keep it tactical, and then ask people ultimately in the networking process for very short time commitments and very clear deliverables. So if you say, hey, can we jump on the phone? I'd love to ask you a couple more questions about the role. When you jump on the phone, come with an agenda. Make sure that in that agenda, you identify that you're going to have questions for them. At the end, make sure one of the questions is, would you feel comfortable referring me for the internship after this conversation we had today? I think a lot of people put extra pressure on themselves in the networking process to build a relationship. I would say that there's a difference between being transactional yet relational and building a relationship. Right, Emma, you're a sophomore at Clemson. Nobody wants to build a relationship with you professionally. Nobody. Right. You don't need to build a relationship with them professionally. You don't know if you're going to work with them. What you need is to build a relational transaction, a one-stop, one conversation meeting where they move your resume from that we don't know her to the we like her pile. That's it. And that's the goal of networking. So simplify it, make it really targeted, really tactical, limit it to the job opportunities that are coming up right now. And I think you're going to find yourself a lot more fruitful.
Oh, okay. Thank you. That's good to know. And is a short conversation 10 to 30 minutes? Is that the time commitment that you could be asking of someone?
Yep, absolutely. Sometimes you can do the deal at a booth in a job fair, right? You can sit there, you can smile at them, you can drop your resume, you can let them know I'm applying. Tell people that they're going to be much more activated to help you if you tell them that you're coming. If you're like, I'm thinking about it, I'm not totally sure, they're not going to be as activated. If you say, I'm applying and I would really like for my application to be phenomenal, then people get invested in helping you get there. So be a little bolder on the front end. But yeah, you can do it in a booth. But if somebody's willing to jump on the phone call with you, I usually ask them if we could set up 15 minutes. Seems like a low lift for them. And if you can get in and get it done in 15 minutes, that's great. Often they'll give you 30, but that is usually a good start.
Hey, Strategy Simplified. My name is Katie. I am a Black Belt alum, and I spent 3 years at BCG in the Middle East. I am now here as part of Management Consultants team to help you figure out what products we offer will help you on your consulting journey. And I also advise Black Belt members and SuperPrep members once they become a part of our community so that they get the most out of what we offer. If you would like to book a 15-minute call with me, you can click the link in the show notes, and I look forward to meeting you.
Heads up, future consultants. If you're serious about breaking into consulting, but you know that you'll need all the help you can get, join our SuperPrep program to change your chances. Check out the link in this episode's show notes to confirm your seat for the next SuperPrep cohort. In SuperPrep, we'll help you add business and consulting experience to your resume to fill in gaps through a 1-week virtual consulting project known as Strategy Sprint. These projects run once a quarter. Next, we'll help you integrate your new consulting experience into your resume and cover letter through custom edits by our MBB team. We'll help weave a compelling narrative through your resume and cover letter to display how your unique background and skill set makes you an ideal candidate for your target firms. From there, an MBB coach will build a custom prep plan for you and guide you through case and fit interview prep. Recruiters love candidates who bring both consulting experience and polish to the table, and SuperPrep will allow you to do both, plus the confidence to shine in your interviews. We run SuperPrep cohorts once a quarter, so check out the link in the show notes to confirm your seat today. In addition, you can book a call with a member of our team before you join. Look forward to seeing you in SuperPrep.
So what are specific skills or courses that you think are must-haves for people who want to go into consulting, even if their major doesn't necessarily have that built in?
Yeah. I mean, what you're doing is phenomenal. You said industrial engineering. Is that right? Yeah. I mean, we need you. You're for supply chain, but also I'm never hiring anybody at the undergrad level, not one person in the history of the universe as an expert. I'm hiring you for potential. So I need to know that you have done analytics in your classes. Industrial engineering, you have, right? I need to know that you've had to present something because part of this is not just like, here's a giant spreadsheet, go figure it out. It's, I built the spreadsheet, I built the analysis, I identified the opportunities, and then you have to sell people on a clear story. So, but honestly, you can get at that in a lot of different ways, and people did in the work that I did for sure at Bain and in all of the consulting firms that we now help people get into at Management Consulted. Some combo of analytics and communication is a real power structure. But we are, when they say we're open to people from all majors, it's super true.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
so there isn't really a right pathway for that.
So how important is your GPA versus being able to sell yourself on the experiences you've had in class and outside of class?
Between a 3.6 and a 4.0, there is almost no difference. But under a 3.6, you have hindered your job prospects. So when you say how important is your GPA, it's like, well, if you're trying to go from a 3.6 to a 3.75, I don't care. And I really don't care too much. I'd rather see like great job opportunities, some activities, et cetera. If you're trying to go from a 3.4 to a 3.6, you really need to do that. So there are some caveats for more difficult major tracks. That's why usually for recruiting, a lot of organizations will have a school specific org. So they might say industrial engineering is harder than economics. So a 3.5 in industrial engineering is the same as a 3.7 in economics, right? So they may like tailor cutoffs like that. But I would say in general, getting a 4.0 or a 4.3 doesn't matter, but getting a 3.6 really does.
Okay, gotcha. I see. So, could you tell us about a time when your career took an unexpected turn? I mean, I know going into consulting is kind of a big one. And then how did you manage that with still trying to figure out what you wanted to do?
Yeah. So consulting was definitely a huge one. I was working in South Africa and I was working with an NGO. I was
Where were you
focused
working
on
in
small
South
business
Africa?
development. I was in Cape Town.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved the work I was doing. It had a lot of purpose. I cared a lot about the people and the businesses that I was both working with and for. I was doing a lot of like microcredit finance work, and I was also developing financial support programs for small businesses in South Africa. It was a pretty new thing. There had only been a democracy for like 8 years when I started working there, right? And so it was really, really like a special, phenomenal time. And I would say like my concern about going into a place like Bain was that I would lose more than I would gain. And I really did not end up finding that to be true. All of the passion that I had, all the ability that I had to continue to work with small businesses and nonprofits were absolutely the same. What I gained at Bain was unbelievable. It's really been a jumping off point for a lot of the rest of my career. But it was a bit of a stretch. I showed up at my cell weekend with a backpack and my hair was in braids. And I was at the Ritz-Carlton and some guy in a top hat's trying to take my backpack from me. And it was just this awkward social dance where we were trying to figure out like who is who in this zoo.
Yes.
Right.
And you're like, I'm just in my little braids.
I'm just in my braids, like hanging out for this cell weekend, and they're rocking us around in limos and town cars, and we're going to clubs at 2 a.m. And I was like, I don't even know what world I'm in. This is not my life.
You're like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. I was the first person in my office who didn't drive a car to the office and get a parking pass. I asked them for a sponsorship for taking the train to the office instead. And so, I mean, it was just like, this was a weird world, right?
There was just so much. It's so different. You're so right.
It's so different. So it was a left turn, but a great one. And in general, I think most of them are. I have a second one that I'll just lay on. When I bought Management Consulted, I was actually moonlighting as a coach with Management Consulted. So I would have been the person that would have done your case interview, edited your resume, kind of helped you with a lot of that stuff. And I actually, kind of got into a fight with the former owner of the business. I thought we could grow the business. He didn't have an interest in it. And I just kind of got tired of not having a very responsive leadership team. And so I planned to quit. And on the morning of my quitting meeting, I just had this thought, like, what if I just bought the business from him instead? And so it was very unstrategic. It wasn't like finally all the goals and hopes of my future are coming to fruition. I just asked him, I was like, hey, like this isn't working, but maybe there's a reason for that. Would you be open to selling the business? And you know, when he said yes, that was like what led me to buy my first business, and now I buy businesses. And so sometimes I think like a lot of us are hesitant to take a first step in a direction because we want to know exactly how it's going to pan out. And in general, I think we just need to know that we're trying something that invigorates us, that we think will be better maybe than what we were doing before. I was working for a company that was on the verge of selling to Google. It was wild for me to take this left
Wow.
turn, but it's been a great, great turn, and one that I would
Mhm.
definitely not change for the world.
So how did you find the transition going from working at a company to now owning and seeing the other side of a company?
Yeah. It's super hard. You can have all the advice in the world, but when it falls on you, if if you make the wrong decision, which I did a number of times, then you get into you get yourself into a pickle, and then there's nobody else to get you out of it except for you. So owning is a challenge. It's a unique challenge. I loved it because one of the challenges that I had in consulting that I discovered after being there for a little while is that I didn't feel like if I worked harder, I would be rewarded for that work financially or practically. It was kind of like you can work hard and you can get promoted, or you can work average and you can get promoted. You can't work poorly and get promoted, but like there wasn't this like differential, right? And it was and it maybe getting rated into a higher category was like a $1,000 or $2,000 bump, not a 20 or a 50 or $100,000 difference. So the pressure and the pain and also the pleasure of owning a business is that it's all on you, but it's also the reward is yours at the end too. And I find that to be thrilling and motivating and exciting. And I discovered in buying a business that I love scaling businesses more than I love starting them. I think there's this confusion in the entrepreneurial world that you have to start something in order to be an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur through acquisition. I'm an entrepreneur who takes great products and scales them. Knowing that that's my place in the marketplace is also a really helpful thing to know.
Okay, wow, that's so interesting. I've never heard of that before, but it makes so much sense because to start it, you're gonna have so many different skill sets than having
Totally.
something to work with, and now it's like, "Okay, how do we grow this?"
How do we grow it?
Yes,
Exactly.
that's so interesting. So what is one thing you would say that is one of the biggest misconceptions that students have of consulting and even just the consulting work-life balance? Because I've heard some people who say there isn't any. I've heard some people who say they find it. Is that dependent on the company? All the things.
Yeah. Look, you have no work-life balance in your first year. If you think you do, you're crazy, and you're probably not very good at learning what you need to do. And I would say that's not just consulting. That's literally any new job. If you have great work-life balance in the first year, you are not learning what you need to learn. You are not good at any job in the first year. That's new CEO of a new company. That's your first year if you run for office, your first year in government. You're just not good at it. And anybody who doesn't acknowledge that is totally crazy. So you look for micro work-life balance in your first year, which is like you keep up with your exercise, you take you take your vacations, but you don't look for early nights and you don't look for easy weeks. That's not the purpose of the first year of your work. So I think a lot of the problem with the idea of work-life balance comes from just like expectations and mentality in that first year. In the long run, you gain work-life balance through leverage. If you are good at your job, you can balance work and life. Nobody else can tell you what to do because they don't want you to leave. Right. And so you understand what the organization needs. You understand how to get it to them in a way that also works for you. In the first year, you don't even know what that is, and you have no skills to deliver it, and you are not valuable. But in later years and in consulting, that really kicks in year two. You have an entire leverage. So when people ask me, what was your work-life balance like? I say in the first year, it was miserable. I was bad at my job. It took me 60 to 80 hours to create work product a week. My work product still wasn't very good. In my second year, I worked like 20 to 30 hours a week. And I was good at what I did. I was better at than the people that had come in underneath me. I got bigger projects to work on. I delivered them faster because I had focused in the first year on what was good for me. And I struggled through that. And I didn't do a great job of demonstrating to the firm, like, I'm committed to this and I'm excited to do this. But it was really, really, it was a powerful learning experience that you'll get work-life balance, but you earn it. You earn it through the leverage that you have by being great at your job first.
And I've heard consulting is kind of shown an exponential graph in terms of getting raises and moving up in the next level. And it's hard because it keeps there's more and more learning because you never really stop. Have
Yep.
you experienced that when you were working?
Totally. Yeah. So when I worked at Bain, and then obviously I've stayed in the industry because of my work with Management Consulted, and I advise a lot of different organizations now. The appeal of consulting is if you're intellectually curious, the learning never stops. The downside of consulting is that you're never really a master at what you do. You master one part of a role, and then they move you on purpose into an expanded role. So yes, that is a challenge. It's for the right person a delight. There are people who leave because they want to have more consistent, repetitive activity. They want to pick and that might be a consistent, repetitive industry. It might be a consistent, repetitive job function. It might be a consistent, repetitive team. They might not like the rotational aspects of how consulting moves you around into different roles as well. But it does create a lot of opportunity to kind of cycle through those new learning experiences, and it does keep it so that the job balance is active. The one other thing that I just want to say, by the way, about work-life balance in consulting is that you get work-life balance over the course of a project, but you don't always get it over the course of a week or a month. What I mean by that is on your first week of a project, you're not working until midnight every day. And your last week of a project, pretty much inevitably, you always are. And so I had this kind of misnomer of trying to have the same pace of work-life balance all the time in my first year. And I found that in the macro, I actually got some weeks that were really easy and some weeks that were really hard. So if you look at work-life balance in the scope of like this week, was this balanced, yes or no? The answer would be no some weeks. If you look at it over the course of a year, I think that a lot of people find that there's plenty of room for building a life that you love inside the work of consulting as well.
I see. So what is the mindset of always having someone keep moving up and keep learning instead of mastering one subject?
Yeah. Well, the general understanding really was a shift in consulting in the early 80s that made it possible for people like me and people like you to go into this field. Historically, if you wanted to be a consultant, Emma, you would need to have 30 years of experience in a field, right? So let's say you are in industrial engineering and you go into into like, let's call it aviation, right? So you're working for like large companies like Boeing or auto parts and aviation parts businesses, and you're like building supply chains. And then 30 years later, after you've done that for a career, you become an advisor. You're a consultant. You or I would have never been consultants under that model. In the 1980s, a couple of pioneering firms, McKinsey was the first one, Bain came shortly after, said, we don't think that we need to teach people expertise. I think we need to teach them toolkits. And if we can teach them problem solving toolkits, then they can solve any problem for any industry, for any at any given moment in time. That's where we are as an industry and consulting right now. Is we apply toolkits to different kinds of problems, and in order to keep your toolkit fresh, you actually need to apply it. You need to test it in different kinds of situations. So that's why ultimately you end up in those situations.
Wow, I didn't know that before. That's really interesting, but it makes a lot of sense for sure. So, getting back to my undergraduate self, how important is it to gain a consulting specific internship or co op now versus just working in any industry to get experience in different fields?
Yeah, the number one thing that I would love to see on a resume is that you have some kind of brand name experience. And consulting sometimes can be that, but often isn't. So if you have the opportunity to work for, let's right, an example would be a Boeing or a Northrop Grumman or something like that. That would be absolutely equally as valuable to me from an employee perspective as it would be that you worked for a consulting firm. Your demonstration of interest in consulting comes through you applying and you telling me in an interview why you're interested in consulting. But you do not have to demonstrate it in the work experience that you've pursued. If you already know you want to go into it, you should go get consulting jobs if you want to work at those companies. But it's not because of a strategy. It's because those companies are appealing to you and you want to work there. But brand name will always trump industry. because it's a demonstration of advanced skills and also competitiveness from a talent pool that someone's always looking for.
So it's like someone's already pre-interviewed you by knowing you can do successfully
like you
work at
cut
a
it
brand
in a
name.
Google interview, you cut it at a Capital One interview, you cut it at a Northrop Grumman interview, like whatever it is that you like, you made the cut for that firm's program or process. Therefore, our chances of liking you when we interview are probably going to be pretty high.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. I didn't know that. And then where did you go to college, by the way?
I went to the University of Virginia.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, University of Virginia undergrad, Columbia Business School for grad school.
Okay, how long did you go between undergrad and grad school?
15 years almost. Yeah, so
Okay.
15 years. I graduated in 2002 from undergrad, and I went in 2017 to business school.
How was that just transition going back into school? Did you feel it was worth it?
Totally. Loved Columbia, loved business school, thrilled that I went. Absolutely did not go to change careers, which is why a lot of people go back into business school. I just went to learn, to be around people, to stretch myself, to challenge myself. I had such a wonderful time. I'm so grateful I did it. I think super highly of those kinds of programs, and I'm confident that I feel like it's probably already paid off, but if it hasn't, like it will. And I'm grateful for that, for just the experience. I don't, you never know. Even the biggest thing that changes is not what you're doing, but who you are. I think when you're in environments like that, you could probably say the same about college for you. It's not what you did or what you learned, but who you became in that process. And Columbia for me was a big part of that as well.
Okay, wow. So going back to University of Virginia, is there anything in college that you wish you had dug into more or you regretted not doing for any specific reason? What's your advice for all things of just even outside the consulting world?
So honestly, I think there are a couple of things that I could more talk about what I did that I'm thrilled I did than regrets that I have because I didn't have a lot.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I don't live with a lot of regret because
Yes.
I basically just do things if I want to do them. But one of the things that I really loved doing, I'm grateful that I did, is that I built a lot of relationships with professors or people who were senior on campus, and I did that by just like encouraging them, by thanking them, by like I went to office hours. If they had office hours, I went and I just sat there and asked them a couple of the PSP questions. That's where I figured out that PSP works, right? Tell me about one thing that you're thrilled that you've done in your career. What's the proudest paper that you've ever written? Like, what's one piece of advice that you would ask, that you would offer to somebody like me? But like in general, just I'm really glad that I focused a lot on relationships outside of my classmates. When I was when I was undergrad, I really took advantage of the other opportunities of building relationships with senior advisors, with administration at the school, and with a number of my professors, some of whom are still friends of mine today. I mean, I took my now 12-year-old son to meet with my college economics professor earlier this year. And we sat in his office. This man is world renowned. And it started with me going to his office hours when I was an undergrad. The second thing that I'm really proud of that I still think I could have done a massively better job of is keeping up with some of those relationships. So if there's one thing that I would recommend that y'all do, there's one guy that I went to business school with. I'm inspired by him every year. He writes a personal newsletter to all of his business contacts. So he's like, I'm in Beijing and this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm thinking about. And I'm really excited to hear from you what you are. Like, I didn't actually know the guy super well when I was in business school, but if I go to Beijing, like the next time I'm there, I'm going to sit down with him. And I think he has a very powerful, like personal CRM that he has developed to maintain relationships. And so I think I could have done a better job of like carrying people through the journey of my career, explaining to them who I was and what I was doing, and even building a bigger, broader, deeper network than I've been able to build now. So when people say like it's who you know and not what you know, I really believe that's true. I believe college is a place to build that. But I think if you build systems to maintain that, that's really where the power of your college relationships comes from.
So what is an example of a system? Is it more of just posting on your LinkedIn or your social media what you're doing, or is it specifically reaching out to individuals?
I think a little bit of both. I think posting can be one good thing, but one of my big beliefs in business is that if you capture somebody's email, you own a relationship with them. If you're on social with them, then you rent the relationship with them. You never know that you're getting through to who they are. So like in business school, we used a lot of chat forums. We used something called GroupMe, which has been replaced now by WhatsApp. But like only a few people are actually active on it. And I would rather have gathered the emails of the 75 people in my cohort, and that would have been a more productive use of the time that I would have spent. So yeah, just thinking through like how you build those relationships, and then the frequency with which you share and what you share, in a way that's really engaging. I think that's what the kind of system that I'm talking about. So his example of an annual email is an example of a system.
That's wonderful. That is so cool. And I'm sure there's plenty other students who are just like you, who are like, wow, I would totally reach out, and that I would love to learn more.
Let's go. Like the next time I'm in Beijing, I'll be there.
You're like, I'm taking this as an invite, a personal invite, actually.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciated it.
Emma, I hope that, out of all that we talked about, the thing that you get is that that like life and the career journey is such an adventure. And there's so much opportunity. Y'all just cannot be ruled by fear in the job prospects process. You need to kind of go for it and reach out to companies that inspire you and people that get you going, and doors will open that you probably will be surprised by. But as we conclude today, I just would love to wrap up with one question for you, which is, what's one thing that you took away from this call that you either didn't know beforehand or that helped you think differently about your job search?
I think one thing is kind of just what you said about not making a decision in fear. I have a very personal belief that I will not make any decisions out of fear of the future. And no one ever tells me that in a job, because it's like, oh, you have to act a certain way and follow all these rituals and these steps. And I'm more of someone, it's like, if I want to reach out, I can reach out, because the worst that happens is they don't answer, I get rejected. And that's not even that bad, because they still know my name. And so just hearing that that's an okay mindset to go forth in my career has been such a blessing.
I love it. Emma, that's how we got this conversation, right? You were like,
Yes.
Hey, I would love to come on and talk. Well
Literally.
done.
And I told my friends, and they were like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, I just tried and it worked out. And that was so cool.
10, 20, 50,000 people later are going to listen to this episode, and it's going to create opportunities for you, not just insights, hopefully, that you got from the convo, but also opportunities for you that you don't expect. So yeah, kudos to you. Thank you again for coming on the pod. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Thank you. I will. Have a nice day.